Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. And today I get to sit with my good friend and mentor, a person who has had a massive impact in my life, Nate Ullrich. He is the executive pastor of the Bridge Church in Lakewood. He's an entrepreneur and he has a COO gifting. Nate, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Johnny. It's my pleasure.
Dude,
My
it's good to
pleasure.
see
What a
you,
great way to
bro.
spend a day.
I know, right? This we get to spend. This is just pure delight for me, man. If y'all don't know, Nate is actually. I've mentioned him. I mention him in probably one out of every three interviews that I do. Nate is my he's my coach. So I actually meet with Nate every couple weeks under his Integro Consulting brand. Is that what Integro Consulting,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And Nate, you're the reason. Really, I don't think my company would exist today if it weren't for the way that you've invested in me over the last 7 years. So that's to say, I take it very seriously to get to draw out the gifts and the riches that are inside this man because I've gotten to experience them myself. So let's start with your testimony, man. Tell us a little bit about your what matters in your life.
Yeah. So I ended up in the role that I'm in pretty unconventional ways. I went to college for business, had every intent of going out into the business world and making as much of an impact as I possibly could. In my mind, back in those years, it was make as much money. Money is value. And I've always had a gift for operations and systems thinking, and so I had the opportunity to really express those gifts in college. And I thought for sure that that was the direction I was going until my senior year, when through various different, now I see them as fortuitous life experiences that God allowed in my life, I landed in the country of Thailand. And that was not at all part of the plan long term. In fact, I was quite against being in any sort of ministry or pastoral context. I grew up as a pastor's kid in rural America, and that life just did not seem interesting to me in any way, shape, or form. And so I found myself living in Thailand, teaching science and math to a bunch of middle school kids. And during that time, God created opportunities and relationships for me to connect with an organization there called the Chiang Mai Christian Fellowship and the Family Connection Foundation. Eventually, got into a role there as the CEO of that organization. I had no idea what I was doing, but fortunately, I was the guy that had an operational gift, and so I had an opportunity to just fall under the oversight of people that loved and cared about me. At that point in time, honestly, when I made that transition to Thailand, I would say I was probably pretty far from God. I was pretty upset about the last year and what had happened in my life. And what I didn't know is that over the course of the next year, I'd find myself in a role as a pastor. I would reconnect with who is now my lovely wife. 18 months later, we'd have our first kid and we'd build a life there over the course of about 10 years. For that time, I got to spend my years building the Family Connection Foundation alongside my father-in-law. So for those people that have worked with family, I get that. I've been in that role. I love my father-in-law to death. We had 10 great years together, building a really cool organization that does some very impressive social work throughout the country of Thailand. And fell in love with ministry, became a missionary in that respect. So I wasn't called into missions and then went into missions. I found myself in missions and found a calling for missions while I was doing it, which again was pretty unconventional. I had to start a nonprofit called Cord Ministries International in order to get there because I realized I didn't have any money, and that it's hard to do ministry if you don't have any money. And so my dad and I founded an organization called Cord Ministries. That organization still serves about 70 partners around the world to today, people that were in those similar experiences and maybe not fit in typical missionary boxes. But I didn't realize during that time what God was actually doing to transform my soul from somebody that was kind of bitter and angry into somebody that just fell in love with the institution of missions, the institutions that support ministry, and really caught a vision for what it looks like to build institutions that are gospel centered, gospel oriented, that pursue the gospel with everything that they do, and that those organizations themselves can actually have a huge impact in kingdom work. I had no idea that that's what God was doing in me. In fact, I remember talking to my wife. I would consistently say over the course of those 10 years, man, I don't know if we ever move back to the States. I don't know what God would have me do. I don't even know what I'm qualified for. I'm like this weird guy with a business degree that spent the first decade of his career in missions. I don't know what I'm qualified for. And I had no idea that in 2017, God was going to call us back to the States, really without much of a plan. But by the time we actually got back here, over the 6 months that it took for us to return back to the United States, God had put in place opportunities for me to get in league with James Hawksworth, who's my buddy here at the Bridge Church at Bear Creek, and visionary pastor. Yep. And at that point in time, it was Bridgeway Community Church, and that was what it was going to be. And within just a few months of even hitting the ground, he had this vision to merge a Presbyterian church with a non-denominational church, and begin a new ministry. And that answered my question: God, what are you going to do with me and my missionary heart
Yeah.
in America? And what I didn't realize is that there is a place for the church to actually to benefit from that vision and the experience that I had had in Thailand. And so James and I quickly aligned and really felt a lot of synergy in the vision that he had for a modern community church, deeply rooted in the community, engaged in the community. And that just checked all my missionary check boxes as far as what I wanted to be part of and how I think the gospel works in people's lives. And so I hopped in. I had no idea at that point in time what that was going to turn into. But again, God is constantly restoring me from the kid that was bitter, that had a business degree, that wanted to go make a ton of money, and then didn't get to do that, into a missionary, a totally unqualified missionary. And I think some of the best missionaries are those that realize that they're unqualified. I'm one of those guys that is totally unqualified. But I've had the opportunity to now work in this organization since 2017. And we've built some really cool stuff that kind of brings us up to where we are. The recovering kid that didn't want to be part of ministry into the guy that now gets to be part of ministry. During that time, obviously, starting up a coaching company, getting to partner with you, find and engage with just amazing people that also love Jesus, that run businesses. That's become a passion of mine. But yeah, God has been good to me and much better than I deserve over the course of those years. And if he can restore this bitter little pastor's kid into somebody that's doing his work, then man, I got hope for everybody.
Really doing it, man. Really doing it. Like you have inspired me with a lot of the vision that you have for the church, and not just your local church, but the church at large. I'm going to try to help people make sense of this a little bit, because your story has a lot of points kind of around the globe, but there is a common theme that ties it all together. So let's start with your relationship with James.
Yeah.
So I'll say, for those of you who are familiar with EOS, there is like it's a beautiful example of the EOS idea of the integrator and the visionary, which you can read about in the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman. But tell us a little bit about why you and James work and how you work.
Yeah. So this was a thing that I was discovering without knowing I was discovering it in that decade that I was in Thailand. My father-in-law was that visionary character. And I'm not even sure if he knew what he was doing, but I certainly give him credit for it. But he was willing to equip an operator to just go to town, swing for the fence.
Yep.
And his support and equipping in that made a huge difference in my life. And I discovered this relationship that an operator and a visionary can have that is absolutely dynamite, right?
It is.
And
Yeah.
so I was surprised to find, when we moved back to the States, a small church of about 150 people that had this visionary pastor that happened to need, at that point in time, an administrator. Really, that was the job I signed up for.
Yeah.
I think they paid me like $400 to teach a Sunday school class and help with like volunteer coordinating.
Yeah.
And through that relationship,
Yeah.
I just realized that everything I love to do is the stuff that James doesn't really want to do.
Yeah.
And everything he loves to do is the stuff that I'm not really gifted to do.
Yeah.
And so through a process of building a relationship, there's a lot of layers of humility there.
Yeah.
And that's not because I'm so humble, because I'm regularly humbled in that process, right? That I have to remind myself that this is what he's gifted for, and it's not what I'm gifted for, and that he is constantly reminding himself, this is what Nate's gifted for, this is not what I'm gifted for. Around the office, we refer to ourselves as the two-headed monster, or in order to effectively manage our team, our staff are constantly asking, like, well, I don't know who my boss is. And they ask that question for about the first month, and then they realize that our two-headed monster really is one monster, right? Between the two of us, the joke is that between the two of us, we make a competent pastor, right? And we're the spread of gifts that I think, unfortunately, the church generally imposes upon a lead pastor and expects them to have, right? To be that spread in and of themselves. We just admit from day one, neither of us have that spread. I don't think anybody really has that spread. But between the two of us, if we work together, if we operate well, if we're humble towards each other, we can actually tag team what that looks like. And so James handles the vision and the teaching, and he's highly relational, and he's constantly drawing people to the gospel. And I love the way that the institution brings people closer to Jesus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, our church is full of people that came from churches that they were hurt by. And some of them came from great churches, but a lot of times they come from churches where there's some baggage there. And that's because we're churches, right? Our church is also a bunch of sinners trying to do our best to follow Jesus. And so we're not getting it perfect every single time. But the reality is that institutions actually play a part in the way we interact with the gospel. And the institution of the church is meant to be this organization that embodies that is the hands and feet of Jesus, right? The bride of Christ.
Yes.
And that can't happen if there's not a range of the gifts of God working together in kind of an executive fashion to actually make that institution happen. And so James and I, we invest very deeply in our relationship. We spend time together. We are good friends. We are totally different. We're the type of people that I think we actually know we're doing it right, because in no other context would we actually be close friends.
Absolutely.
Like there's no weird context where we would become fast friends and meet. It's not natural in that way.
Yeah.
But it is divine. And that is, that's something that as long as we keep that at the forefront and we recognize that, it really does make a big difference in how we operate.
I'm going to underline a few things here. So one thing is, it just occurred to me, you're like a student of how Jesus Christ, the mysterious Jesus Christ, embodies himself through an institution, right? Like that is your art form. Your skill set is how, because that's what you helped us with so much, was self-consistency with the vision, right? Like that was a word you used a lot. That was a theme that came up a lot. Are you self-consistent with the vision? And to that end, you helped us go through an exercise to understand what our vision was. And then you were like, let's distill that down into a structure, a one-page document that we can all look at all the time. And then we're going to do the work over years of becoming an institution that actually is what its vision says it's supposed to be.
Right.
Which never happens because it's hard. It's really very hard.
Yeah.
It's easy to generate a vision. It's hard to create an institution that embodies the vision. That's hard.
Yeah.
And that's what Nate does.
I believe that institutions, right? We're the bride of Christ. The institution has a persona. It has an identity. It has a purpose, right? It isn't just a robotic, mechanical thing, but it really is in a lot of ways the embodiment of the heart and soul of the people that populate it. And so the church itself can do a lot of work, but it has to understand at a very core level who it is.
Yes.
And so we ask that core question, who are you? And we drive deep at that core question, and we create a framework for it so that it becomes a useful tool in the process. But I think a lot of times when I do case studies on churches that are struggling, and again, our church is not anything perfect. Like we struggle. A lot of times my case studies are on how we failed, on how we messed it up. And so this isn't just an other focused thing. But when we study that, what we often find is that there is a disconnect between who a church is and what they do, right?
Yep.
And because there's this disembodied idea that, well, we know who we are, we're the bride of Christ, right? But let's draw all of our operational wisdom from the business world. There's a good chunk of operational wisdom we can draw from the business world, from successful businesses. But there's also the fact that we work in an economy of souls and people.
Yes.
Not an economy of money. For us, money is a byproduct. Money is part of the process. It's the fuel, but it is not actually the economy that we work in. We are here for the souls of people. And so we have to be differentiated from what a business looks like in a way. And when we get too corporate in how we run our churches, it becomes very dehumanizing. And that's because, again, we've forgotten who we are, right? We're the bride of Christ. We're a person. We have this identity piece that's deep and soulful, and that's where the relationship happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
you'll
beautiful,
hear
man.
one last
Yep.
point to that. You'll hear people say, "Well, I was hurt by the church." Right? We use that language like the
Yep.
church is a person.
Yeah.
It's not a person, but it is a person,
Yeah.
right?
It
So
is a person. Yep.
oftentimes what we'll ask is, "Who hurt you?" Right?
Yes.
And
Did
what we
Jesus
find
hurt
is
you?
that in our heads we
Right.
actually treat a lot of times our relationship with the church as a relationship with a human being.
Yeah.
And so churches we got to be smarter about that. We got to understand that that's how
Yep.
people engage with us. And the
Yep.
institution needs a personality. It needs a soul. It needs this deep core of identity that's actually going to help decide how it makes decisions and where it goes.
Yeah. Yep. And part of that flows down from the leadership, right? A huge, I mean,
For sure.
like the Lord endows it, right? Like the Lord endows an identity to a local manifestation of the church, but that is done through leaders,
Yep.
right? Who
Yep.
are helping to set the vision and set the execution and the direction
Right.
for the church.
Right.
It's interesting. So another thing I wanted to underline. So when you talk about yourself and James and the idea of like maybe one of the places where churches are creating, or our church culture is creating pressure that breaks pastors, it can be from the expectation that a pastor is supposed to be both the visionary and the integrator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I remember I experienced some of this like in a different, like I'm gonna give a metaphor. So when I read the book Good to Great,
Yeah. Great book.
the Good to Great, great book, and the chapter on the level 5 leader it broke my heart, because it described like a lot of these level 5 leaders at these organizations that were super duper successful, these businesses, they were actually both visionary and integrator, right? They were a beast when it came to vision, and a beast when it came to like relational nuance, and a
Right.
beast when
Sure.
it comes to tireless, relentless execution. They were all these
Right.
things. And
Right.
so one of the questions in the book in that chapter is, that the author gets all the time is, well, can I, if I'm not a level 5 leader, can I become a level 5 leader? And he answers that, I don't know. He says,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there like, I want to do good to great. Like I want to do this. I want to execute this in my company, but I'm
Right.
not a level 5 leader. Like I
Right.
know that
Right.
whole integrator gift set does not belong to me. So I got discouraged until I read the book Rocket Fuel. And it showed me another way, right? That now I have an integrator, Caleb.
Right.
You've
Yeah.
helped me raise up
Great
Caleb
guy.
to be an incredible, number 2, an incredible integrator, our 2-headed monster. And I get to be free to be what I am, which is
Right.
I'm all visionary. I'm no
Yeah.
integrator,
Yeah.
right? But it makes me wonder how much we're setting up pastors by putting that pressure on them, and it breaks them, right?
Right.
It
Right.
it makes them constantly feel like they're insufficient for the task. And so anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Gonna
No,
respond.
that's usually the vast majority of pastors, right, fall on the spectrum of somewhere between an integrator and a visionary. Rarely do they hit the middle spot between both and have competent skills in both places, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if we look at it as a spectrum, it just helps us understand what we need to supplement, right? And so if you're on the spectrum towards the visionary, we know we need to supplement integrator. If
Yes.
you're a pastor that has a huge heart that has some vision, but you tend towards integrator, we know we need to supplement vision. If you're the guy that's in the middle, what you're going to need is people to stretch you. Because honestly, if you're stuck there in the middle between those two things without somebody investing deeply in you, without somebody really challenging you, it's very possible you actually end up not being great at either of them.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of those guys that we see that can be a higher capacity of both of those things, that level 5, it's not because they came out of the womb that way. It's because they came out of the womb with a skill set that was probably somewhere in between on the spectrum, and then they had people invest in them in really powerful ways that helped them stretch and grow in both areas. And so they're constantly able to context switch between those two things where they need to do that. But that takes a process. That is not normal for most people. The vast majority of pastors will struggle to be that level 5 because that's just not how most people are gifted. And so if we're talking about generically how we equip pastors, we need to assume they're probably on a spectrum. We need to identify where on that spectrum they are, and we
Yes.
need to identify how we can supplement them on that
Yes.
spectrum. If we don't do that, we're absolutely setting them up for failure because we're asking them to do something that's outside of their gifting. And that is going to cause stress. That's going to cause failure. Sometimes those stresses and failures, that's what causes moral failure in the context of these leaders, is because they don't feel like they can be honest that, hey, I really don't like this part, or I'm not good at this part of my job. So I'm pretending at it, right? And they're doing it. James, the other day in a sermon, he was preaching, and he was talking with his counselor, and he was talking about how this principle of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And the counselor came back with this beautiful, beautiful thing. He said, no, I don't believe in this fake it till you make it stuff. Face it till you make it.
Yeah.
Right? That's what a lot of pastors are doing, is they're bravely facing it
Yeah.
until they make it. And the reality is that's hard. That's really, really hard. And so how can we supplement that? That pastor is bravely standing there in the storm, facing the thing they're not great at, leaning into it, trying to grow in that skill. But a lot of times they're doing it in a vacuum that is lonely, that's not well equipped, with people that are not super compassionate to their scenario. And so we need pastors to face it till you make it, but we also got to equip them with the right skills and tools and personalities so that it's actually achievable, so that we expedite that process, and we avoid them having to take that huge big burden on their shoulders, which oftentimes does cause failure.
All right. So now we're talking about, your heart. And I think anybody who's watching this can see your heart for the capital C church, right? Like there's things that you're seeing that could benefit the church at large. And part of it is an understanding of its own conception of leadership. And you have a heart, I've heard you say this before, you have a heart specifically for this persona, which you call the entrepreneurial executive pastor, which is basically the integrator, right? Like the more, I love how EOS and Rocket Fuel have given a language that I think is useful for the conversation, because it creates this precedent of experience that's happening everywhere. In business, in nonprofits, and in churches. And it's this duality that creates this momentum. Right. But your heart is for that particular part of that duality, which is what you call the entrepreneurial executive pastor, which is kind of the COO of the church, right? And I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about that persona, that profile, and what you're trying to do to help fill that gap.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial personality generally in churches is framed in the context of the lead pastor. Usually that's where that lays, right? And a lot of times it's true. The lead pastor tends to be that visionary with the entrepreneurial spirit. The problem is that sometimes as integrators, we come to the table with a skill set of integration, but not necessarily entrepreneurship, which means the lead pastor stresses us out, right? He's always reaching further out than we can see. He's willing to take risks. They're willing to take risks that we're not willing to take or that we can't see. And so we're constantly putting the brakes on the machine. And I don't think that's actually a very healthy mentality, right? This idea that somehow he's the gas and I'm the brakes. Breaks down because you can't drive a car with your foot fully on the gas and the brake at the same time, right? You got to know how to do that. And it requires the executive pastor to have an entrepreneurial spirit to know where we can take risks, right? Where we can take chances. I was that guy that in college, I was helping my buddy set up like his first record label, right? And it failed and it was fun, but I loved the process, right? In college, I got to do a bunch of small business consulting for just little mom and pop shops, helping them run through their business and understand how they can make more money and be more efficient. I've loved the process of entrepreneurship. I didn't realize that the most success I would have in entrepreneurship would be in ministry. Right? There's not this idea that you can be a successful ministerial entrepreneur. This idea is like, well, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to go into business, right? One of the things that I realized that my father-in-law gave me, I didn't realize the gift that was he really had enough trust in me to hand me the keys to the castle and say, hey, check in, don't burn the place down, be creative and go for it. And so I got to experience the opportunity to put resources and people to work doing risky entrepreneurial ministry. And a lot of it worked. And a lot of it made huge impacts in people's lives and still to this day is going and impactful and entrepreneurial. And yes, I learned a ton of mistakes, right? We had failures for sure. Sometimes we took risks that didn't work out, right? Or we made investments that didn't pay off. But what I learned in that is as an executive pastor, as an integrator, if I can learn and be comfortable with the entrepreneurial spirit, I can actually walk better in lockstep with the lead pastor of the church. And yeah,
Yes.
sometimes he's pressing the gas and I'm saying, hey, we got to press the brake. Sometimes I'm pressing the brake and he's saying, hey, get your foot off the brake. Like, we're going. And that's, in fact, we just had one of those conversations the other day. It was a couple of weeks ago. We're about to start this big process we're going through. We'll talk more about it. But I was kind of riding the brakes a little bit, getting ready. And essentially the nature of our conversation was, when are you going to, like, it's time to go. It's time to press the gas. And so he challenged me in that. And I heard that. God, again, humbled my heart. This is not Nate's gifting. This is God humbling my heart and giving me the ability to hear that and saying, okay, now it's time to press the gas. So now we're in a situation where I got my left foot like hovering over the gas or over the brake, but he and I are both crushing the gas pedal right now because that's what's necessary.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be done there. And so as the entrepreneurial executive pastor, it's this idea that we can either have or express or learn the entrepreneurial gifting to know when to take risks, when to press the gas, to not simply just ride the brakes all the time. Because I tell you, that is going to frustrate your lead pastor to no end. They're going to hate the fact that you sit and ride on the brakes all the time. And so I'm not saying that executive pastors do this, but it's definitely more the stereotype, right? That the executive pastor is the brakes and the lead pastor is the gas. And so I want to break that stereotype a little bit. I want to train up executive pastors that are really comfortable with being in an entrepreneurial environment where they're really great integrators that have a keen sense in their soul of where risks are appropriate and where they're not, and how we can actually work together with our lead pastors to sometimes crush the gas pedal when it needs to happen. So I would love to see that role blossom. I don't know that there's like a path for that. I don't know that I've ever met a university or school that has like an entrepreneurial executive pastor track. And so I think we have to do some work in defining that profile. But man, I see a huge value for it in ministry, and I would love to see that get replicated over and over again. I think there's a lot of health in the future of the church and restoring the church if we can release that teammate alongside a lead pastor to do God's work.
Yeah, I like that term, release. You what you would like to see is you want to release that gift, right? You want to call forth a generation of entrepreneurial executive pastors who are gonna operate in lockstep with visionary leaders and equip the vision of Christ and the progress of the kingdom like never before.
Right,
You want to
right.
release that gift into the world, because I also understand it's ridiculous to us to think about having a car where you push on the brakes and the gas at the same time, right? Like everybody, like that made me laugh out loud because I'm like, yeah, of course you would never do that, right? But there needs to be a healthy relationship and a healthy understanding, because I'm gonna just put this in the context of hope versus fear, right? I think a lot of times that executive pastor in that role, or whoever the person is in the organization that's kind of like the brakes, operates from a fear standpoint, right? Like
It's kind of their job to some extent. We're checking liabilities, right?
like their job.
Checking blind spots, right? And there's a value to that.
Right.
It just can't be overwhelming.
As we've defined it, right?
Yeah.
But so the pastor's all hope, and that role is all fear. The pastor's all future and grow, and that person's all stay the same, don't over risk it. And that can never be a healthy relationship. It can't be a healthy dynamic, because we are trying to grow. Like that is the goal, is we want to grow and mature, like living things grow. Living trees grow and bear fruit. Living plants grow, or organisms that are healthy grow.
Right. Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean numbers. It can mean a lot of different things.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you signed up to be a part of the church, you signed up to be a part of a growing organism. And so how do we create that health between the visionary leader and the accountable leader, the integrator, where it's like, no, we're on the same team. We're both trying to grow.
Right. Right.
You're just trying to help me not make stupid mistakes and
Right.
burn it all down in the first year.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the case, right? Is can we create and express a humility in that duality of relationship, where I can say to my lead pastor, to James, hey, you're the boss. I submit to you. Like, I submit to that vision. I'm good with that. And at the same time, can you respect my perspective and my role enough to also equip me and empower me to have meaningful leadership in the organization?
Yes.
Right. And we've figured that out in God's grace in our particular organization, and we fight hard for that, right? James and I have, maybe not weekly, but fairly regularly, we sit down and we I don't know, argue. We speak directly about things because we don't necessarily always see eye to eye on that. And it requires the process of reconciling. And if you've got a lead pastor that is frustrated by the process of reconciling that with their executive pastor, it will be untenable. If you have an executive pastor that is frustrated or insecure enough in their role that they're unwilling to also submit to the lead pastor, then it's untenable. You can't have this power struggle. It has to be a relationship in the truest sense. And you also have to have a keen sense of where your limits are, right? Another joke around the office is that, if I were to, die and get hit by the big red bus, James would figure out a way to kill the church in a week. But if he got hit by a big red bus, I'd figure out how to kill in a year.
Yeah.
Either way, if we're not balanced,
Yeah.
we're going to kill the church, right? We need both of those expressions in the church. And yeah, there's a timeline and there's a sense of maybe stability in the work that I do, but there's a sense of progress in the work that he does. And the church needs both of those things. You have to have both of those things for churches to be successful. And I greatly respect my counterpart that he helps to facilitate that by just being a humble man that knows that he's got somebody, I've got his back and I care about him and I'm willing to hop in and take risks with him. But at the same time, he listens when I say, hey, I think we do need to pump the brakes here, or I think we need it. Like, he listens.
Trust you.
And that's a beautiful thing, because so it's not a two-headed monster in that we are equal and peers, but there is a peer aspect to our submitted relationship.
For sure.
Right. And that requires humility, not just on my part as the number two. It requires a lot of humility on his part as the number one to be willing to engage in that sort of a relationship. So I think training it up in the system itself, right? That's at least what we're trying now, is we're trying to create an environment where this type of relationship is encouraged, that we're actually building a team with these types of dynamics so that eventually we can release more duos, two-headed monsters into the ministry world, where I think they can be remarkably successful. But I don't know how to train that other than to do it and to raise people up in that and to try and form them and give them feedback and help them create those kind of relationships. I don't know how to do that other than to just model it and do that as part of discipleship.
Well, and you are doing that. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the Bridge Church right now, and the transformation and rejuvenation that you're bringing to Lakewood.
Yeah.
Colorado.
So my missionary heart wants to see the church thrive, right? I want to see the Big C church embody the influence that I know is in the gospel. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, right? And again, because we're a bunch of sinners. We at the Bridge Church are a bunch of sinners trying to get together to do this thing called ministry, collaboratively with Christ in his process, in his timing, and it is humbling. And so this is not by any means me trying to assert, our power, our grandiose on this particular system. We are trying to figure this out along the way as well. But my missionary heart wants to take what I learned in those 10 years of doing missions in Southeast Asia and just apply it to the local church, which means God's local people investing in God's local church to grow and build the kingdom here, right? And that means we're focused on our zip code and surrounding zip codes. We're not focused on taking and planting churches in other cities. And I know there are other churches that do that, feel called to that. That's just not our conviction. That doesn't mean that we're hating on those people. Our conviction at the Bridge Church is to be focused on the local community, the zip codes we're in and surrounded by.
Yep.
And that means we have to have a vision for what the modern community church looks like. We can't do that if our vision is actually for a commuter church, right? Where the church is here and everybody drives 10 miles to church and we're collecting people from all over the city. that's not going to revitalize the local church in Lakewood, because that limits how many points of church there are for hopefully an unlimited number of people to participate in. And
And
so,
also, let me even say this too. It's limited because your people are coming and being transformed and then going away,
yeah,
and they're going
absolutely.
further out. And
Yep.
you're right, like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there is a geographical impact to
Right.
transforming people
Right.
where you are.
Right. So we know, in missionary terms, we are qualified to speak to the culture and the context, the economics of Bear Creek. That's the little subset of the city of Lakewood that we're in. That's where we're most qualified. And so that's where we're ministering. And so we've taken a huge amount of our resources and pointed them towards the gospel in Bear Creek, Colorado. Right.
Wow. This
And
is ours. This is our spot.
this is, yeah,
Our flag is here.
our job is to minister to this community, right? This is where we are. And again, I have international missions in my background. I see a huge value in going to the world and preach the gospel. And we got to reach all nations. We absolutely need to do that. I think that when we're doing that from a platform that is not yet reached, we're weaker. And so part of our strategy is, let's see a really healthy church happen here in Bear Creek, Colorado and surrounding areas. And then from that springboard, let's get out there and let's preach the gospel to all nations, for sure. But let's not make sure that we're stepping over the people on our doorstep to minister to people that are not on our doorstep.
Yes.
Right? That there could be a bit of a trophy there, I think, sometimes, that we pursue and we forget we're literally stepping over people in our immediate community in order to get there.
Wow.
And so we're located here. So what that looks like at the Bridge Church is a vision to be a community church, right? Community churches all the way back to like the 1500s, where, right, all the way back to the Acts Church, really. But then again, kind of in the 1500s with like the cloistered church and in the local communities, and then coming all the way up to really the modern kind of 1980s, 1990s churches, before we really got big mega churches.
Yeah.
The community church was the place where you did life. Right?
Yeah.
It's a place where you got educated over the course of many of those hundreds of years. You were educated there. You learned to read there. You had community meetings there. If you had needs, you went to the church. If you needed food, you went to the church. Right? It was a community space, and I think that there's still a place for that with the church. It might look different, but I still think there's a place for the church to serve that role. And so in our particular case, it looks like just trying to become a community hub. One of our philosophies is that if we just put people that know the gospel in arm's length of people that need the gospel, there's not a lot we need to do there other than just to create that context as the church.
Yes.
We believe that God's believers have something
Yes.
contagious.
Yes.
Let's just put them in context, right? So in our particular case, we're right next door to a public high school and just, 400 yards from a public K-8 school. And so our hope is how do we draw those families in? Because we want them to know the gospel. We want them to know hospitality. We want them to have access to this good news. So because of the location of our property, we realized that we had hundreds of kids walking through our property every single day on their way to school, literally walking through the parking lot. And so we thought, hey, we might have something here. Let's try a church coffee shop. And everybody thought, wait a second, church coffee shops, they always fail, right? They never pay the bills. It's always this idea that like we're going to fund ministry and do all these things. I researched a bunch of coffee shops while we were going through this process. And it was very clear. Everybody was saying, essentially, don't do it. It's a giant waste of money. My wife has this amazing vision for a community space in what is the original A-frame of the sanctuary, a beautiful, beautiful space. And when she saw that space, she's the one that started the coffee shop. She wanted to see that space come to life again with community hospitality. And so over the course of about a year, she donated her time as well as several other people donated their time. And the church raised a bunch of money and we renovated this space and put in a coffee shop. And on day one, we had tons of people. What we didn't realize was on day one, we had a ton of high school kids. And immediately the place turned into a high school cafeteria. And we thought, oh, well, this isn't as sustainable for a community coffee shop when it's a high school cafeteria environment. You can imagine going to work remotely for a day, great Wi-Fi, you sit down to work, and then 100 high school kids come in and get in line. And, they're rowdy and rambunctious. They're high school kids, right?
Yeah.
So we realized that's going to be a problem. So the coffee shop kept growing. Thank God through COVID, we survived COVID, and the coffee shop continued to grow a community environment. But what we realized is we needed a space for all these high school kids that just wanted to be off campus. And so there became the vision for a teen center. And so I believe it was 2022, maybe 21, 22. We opened the Underground Teen Center, which is literally just our basement. In this old church, the basement was built in the 70s. It's kind of what you would expect as kind of a dingy church basement, but we had a ton of space. God has provided this in this merger of these two churches, a 42,000 square foot building. We have to figure out how to use it.
Wow. Wow.
And so we opened up our basement. And sure enough, kids started coming out of the woodwork. Every day we were getting hundreds of kids, hundreds of kids. Well, that made it pretty clear we need to invest in that. And so as a church, again, we raised money. Thank God for the incredible, faithful, and generous people at the Bridge Church that constantly put their money where the vision is. Constantly. That's been such a huge benefit. So we renovated the Underground Teen Center. It's like 7,000 square feet of teen center space now. We had games donated, resources donated. It's a beautiful space now. It's fun for teens. And we get to see
You got everything down there. You got like arcade
25%
games.
of the high school population shows up to this teen center. It's a huge ministry environment.
What percent?
What was that?
What percent?
About 25% every week of the high school, the public high school population. About 150 to 175 kids a day is pretty normal. We do 2 lunches, we do an after school program, and on Thursdays we do an early open. And so we've staffed it with full-time staff members. We've brought in interns. We have a handful of volunteers that give their time. It's very labor intensive, but man, we are seeing amazing fruit in that. And these kids, this is becoming their community space, which again, if you want to create a community environment, you have to create a space, right? So now the coffee shop, because all these high school kids are going to the teen center, has really become a community coffee shop. And it serves about 40,000 people a year. This big,
Wow.
beautiful space. It pays for itself
What's
and
the
helps
average?
fund ministry.
Do you know the average? You're serving 40,000 a year. Do you know the average for a lot of these other church coffee shops?
I don't think it's that high, but no, I don't know. I just know what I constantly get told by church coffee shops is they don't pay for themselves. And so I'm assuming that it's lower than that, right?
Yeah.
But this coffee shop pays for itself. It pays for ministry, right? And we tell people, hey, proceeds from the Front Porch Coffee Shop go to directly benefit the Underground Teen Center. And so they're connected in vision. So that's our vision for the community. When a community member
good.
comes in and buys a cup of coffee, they know that I'm not getting some sort of profit paycheck out of that. The proceeds of that purchase, after we cover our expenses and stuff, are going to help fund ministries in their community. And so through the teen center and through the coffee shop, and then we do tons of HOA meetings and community meetings and all that good stuff. We're seeing like 300 people a day through our building, Monday through Saturday. So on Sunday, we get like 700. But 6 days a week, we see another 300 every single day. So we're having the opportunity to rub shoulders with literally thousands of people per week in a little tiny church of 700 people.
Yeah.
It's a community center. We're putting people, and by putting people in this common space, we are seeing new life, right? We are seeing people come to faith. We're seeing people walk into a church coffee shop. First off, not realizing most of the new customers we get, they don't know it's a church coffee shop. They just search on Google, coffee shop near me. Front Porch Coffee Shop pops up. They show up. And you can just see this look on their face. They're going like, is this a church I don't understand. How does it have such good reviews? Why? I don't understand. It's a church coffee shop.
I've been there. It's great.
Yeah. And then they come in, and maybe it's a person that is an ex-evangelical or somebody that has left the church or that's questioning the role of the church. And maybe they think, hey, man, the church has really dropped the ball on being a community center and being a community good and all these things. And then to see them walk into the Front Porch Coffee Shop and see all of our high school community art on the wall and our mural that the high school art department did, and get a great cup of coffee from a smiling barista that loves them, and understand that the proceeds of that are going to benefit the 150 high school kids that are in the basement right now being loved on, it starts to draw into question maybe some of the experience they've had in the church in the past. And as they reconcile that, we see people come to faith. We see people come back to faith. We see people come to the church. We get to baptize new people every single year that come to faith through this path, which is not our doing, but just by the grace of God that he continues to put people in our space. So I am absolutely a believer that the community church has a role to play in local schools, that the community church has a role to play in community environments, in the community context of generating community. I think the local church has a part to play in local art. Our church is full of local art from local artists. We pay professional artists to come in a couple times a year and do art displays in our church. We give the place space to the high school to come and do art. We just did an artisan market where we had, I think, 12 or 14 vendors from the local community show up and just sell their products at the coffee shop, and it was a community day. We do community festivals. We are so invested in the community. I really do hope, if there's one thing that's a takeaway from this, is that if anything ever happened to the Bridge Church of Bear Creek, the community would be sad to see it go.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's part of the legacy.
Yeah.
Not for my legacy or for James's legacy or for anybody's legacy, but because I want pastors to know that that can be done. And
Yes.
that's worth pursuing.
Yes.
It's highly entrepreneurial. It's highly risky, but man, it is so beautiful to be part of when you see it happen. So that's what's happened at the Bridge Church
So amazing,
just now.
dude. I love it, man.
But the problem is we're running into space issues,
Yeah.
right? We got a sanctuary that seats 500. We're getting 750 on Sunday mornings. That's 2 services. One service is starting to get pretty overfull. What are we going to do? Third service, become a mega church, become multi-site? How? At some point in time, you got to come up with a solution there, because you can't just close the doors, right? And there's no better way to snuff out a church than just close the doors. So now it looks like, let's cast this vision of the broader community. Let's see what it looks like to revitalize local churches in the Bear Creek community. Not because we have some sort of special sauce, but because we have a surplus of God's blessing, and it is absolutely our duty to steward that surplus well and invest it in other churches. So we want them to be part of that. And so we're looking for partners where we can come alongside them and do church revitalization kingdom adventures. That's what we're calling. We started Kingdom Adventures.
Love that name.
And we're going on kingdom adventures together, right? And we've got our first taker, right? We just adopted this great little church in Lakewood that is a really healthy small community, but was just really struggling to have the resources to get economically stable. And so we went to them and said, hey, how about if we bring your pastor on our team? And we just give him an opportunity to be part of a team, right? He's probably tired. He's been doing this for 10 years by himself. It's exhausting. Come be part of our team. Come serve. Hey, and then all of you, just come join the Bridge Church. Come join our family. Be in our discipleship groups. Be in our community. Be part of the vision. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn around and put our money where our mouth is. We're going to raise the necessary funds to go and do the deferred maintenance and the renovations on this building that was built in the 50s and the 60s. And in 2 years, we're going to put a brand new independent community church in that building. And we're going to let that community church see if they can minister there. This church is, I don't know, I haven't done the math. It's like 2 miles, maybe 3 miles from where we are. We have people in our church that live blocks from where this new church plant is going. We understand that we're actually going to lose people to this church. Like that we're going to have people in our church that want to go to this other church because it's literally in their community. And we're trying to prepare ourselves to not only be okay with that, but to send them.
Celebrate it, man. Yes.
Celebrate it.
Man,
right?
yeah.
We would love to see in 2 years an economically sustainable church at this new location in 2 years with a healthy team, hopefully a pastoral team that embodies kind of the lead pastor, entrepreneur, the executive pastor, figuring out how to do that on that economic scale, making sure that we have the 3 personalities, right? The prophet, priest, and king are all present there in the leadership of that church on day one. That's economically sustainable on day one.
There. Prophet,
priest, and king, right? So it's your 3 leaders in the church world, right? Your prophet is your lead pastor, right? It's your visionary, it's your vision caster. Your priest is your caregiver, who's going to have this giant heart for the people you love and serve, that's going to show up in their hardest times, right? A lot of times the lead pastor does that as well, but I've found that a lot of times there's a pastoral gift of somebody that has that bedside manner. They're the person you want sitting with your family when they just lost somebody. Like, you got to make sure that person is present. Yeah. And then the king is the order maker. They're the one that takes the vision of the prophet and turns it into an ordered system of gospel ministry. So on day one, let's figure out how to get the spectrum of those 3 personalities in place. Let's figure out how to get an economically sustainable size of congregation on day one. Let's make sure that this church really never knows a day where they have to just struggle along because they've got such a surplus of blessing being poured into them that they're just going to take off like rocket fuel. Yes. And then let's turn around in like 3 years and do it again. And in 3 years and do it again. Yep. So we're looking for partners that are willing to go on those kingdom adventures with us. I am beyond excited because in
Dude,
every piece,
so
this is checking all my missionary boxes, right? This is God's people going where they are most qualified in order to create expressions of the bride of Christ that are community oriented. And yeah, there's going to be the DNA of the bridge at all these different expressions for sure. But we're not expecting some piped in circumstance. We want them to know their actual pastor, right? So it's a community church. It's an independent church. Let's become experts on when to put the training wheels on and when to take the training wheels off to set that church up for success. So that eventually we're just pushing them down the road and they're just biking, looking back, going, "Hey, Dad, look what I did. This is amazing. Look at me. Look at me. I'm riding my bike." Like that's this type of scenario we want to create here, because then it's not just us. In another 3 to 7 years, when that church is stable, let's have them turn around and plant another church, and let's do this
yeah, bro.
together.
Multiplication. True
Multiplication.
multiplication. Bro, you were so lit up for almost this whole hour talking about this.
This is
Like
the stuff
you
I love.
are doing exactly what you were made to do, man. Like, and I just get to see it, and I get to just rejoice in what the Lord has made with Nate Ullrich, man. I just appreciate you so much. I want to underline one thing. So the prophet, priest, and king, like that framework.
Yeah.
Many people that are watching are not going to have heard of that before.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's really interesting because in my my book, The Superpower Quest, completely independent of any conversations that you and I had, my framework was the 3 core drives. And the 3 core drives are progress, order, and harmony.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that insane, bro?
Yeah.
Like those are
Yeah.
the exact same personas.
Yeah.
The prophet is progress,
Yep.
the king is order,
Yep.
and the priest is harmony.
Yeah.
Right? And so like those functions are universal. And
Yeah.
anybody who's
We'll put
running
them in
an
a business
institution.
context, right? You have a
Yeah.
business visionary.
Yeah.
You have a business integrator.
Yep.
And every business has somebody that cares about their employees, whether that's HR or some
Yep.
care person on
Yep.
it. Every business that does it well has all 3 of those personalities. Every
Yes.
church that does it well has those 3 personalities.
Yes.
I think it's a universal truth created by God at the beginning of time. I don't think this is a new invention.
It's a trinity. Yeah, man. It's a triune thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
dude. Like, and I think you and I maybe have talked about this before, but like that it hit me as you were talking. Man, that is a great simple way to understand what health looks like. What does health look like in an institution?
Yeah.
Order, progress, and harmony in balance with each other.
Yeah, for sure.
All of them happening fully, all of them flourishing. And so you're here to facilitate flourishing in your local church community in Bear Creek, but you're also it's the glow and the shine is growing to the point where now it's spilling out to other churches in that Lakewood community and will continue to do so, right? But you also have a heart for the state and right, not above your local community, but you have a heart for the state and the nation and the world.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any business, if you're in any sort of a startup, you don't start on the Fortune 500, right? If we want to take the gospel to the nations, we don't get to start on the Fortune 500, right? We start in our communities. We start on our doorsteps. We start in my home, in my neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And we build from there. I want to see people go off into the world, but I think we got to make sure that our local church is prepared for that mission.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I do think that there are a lot of communities in the United States at this point in time that don't have that kind of church health.
Yeah.
Either because the churches are underserved or just because there hasn't been that infusion. But man, I'm thinking, yes, I would love to see that happen. I just know that that's probably in my lifetime, the thing I can do is create the healthiest platform for reaching the world with the gospel that I possibly can. And that's a community with thriving churches.
Yeah.
And this is where I think we're most qualified to do that work. And so this is where we're invested. We are invested in international partners as well. We are invested in other ministries as well.
Right.
But there is an unabashed focus on what's happening right here in our zip code.
Yeah. It's your love gifted to the world, right? Like your love gift to the kingdom is the community that you are a part of and that you are facilitating and helping by the power of the Holy Spirit to thrive. Right. That's what you have to show, right? Like, it's not like, you're going to be like, let me tell you about this thing that I think works. You're going to be like, let me show you this thing.
Yeah.
That God did.
That's one of the things we get to do. We literally get to bring people. If you're ever in Lakewood, Colorado,
Yes, you
Look
got
me
to
up.
do this.
I would love to meet you. Just
Yeah.
come and see it, right? Johnny, you got a
Come and
chance to
see.
see it one day. I love to show people what happens on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Bridge Church. Because at most churches, what's happening there is nothing, right? But at the Bridge, it's flourishing with
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And man, I just come be a pastor, come be inspired by that. Come be a pastor that just gets to experience that. And I just want you to know that the big vision that you have for your community, right? The kingdom adventure that if you're a pastor listening to this, the kingdom
Yeah.
adventure you want to go on,
Yeah, man.
it can happen,
Yeah,
right?
man.
I want you to be confident in that. One of the things that wakes me up every day is all the can'ts that I hear people say about how the church can't be a good partner with public schools and we can't be a community space and high school
Yeah.
kids won't come to church and all
Yeah.
these things. Boy, I just don't see a lot of can't in the gospel. I just don't
Yeah.
see it there.
Yeah.
And so I would love for you to be able to see and be inspired by something. And then let us know how we can come alongside you. Let us know how we can come alongside that vision because I am convinced that the bride of Christ is the tool for bringing the gospel to the nations.
Yeah,
And
baby.
this is the creative space where we're able to do that work.
Dude, you're like a mission, like that missionary heart you didn't have to put it on the shelf,
No,
right?
no,
Like,
not at
isn't that
all.
wild?
That's
You didn't.
crazy. That's
No,
crazy. Yeah.
you got to just put it to work in a local community as if you were going overseas or wherever. You would do it this way.
Yeah.
Wherever you were going, you would do it this way. You'd be like, I'm going to come serve the community that's
Yeah.
around me.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna send the church is a place of transformation, and we're gonna send these transformed people out into the community, and they're gonna transform the community, and that's how it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're running a little late, but I'm gonna ask you a last couple questions, probably. How can people come alongside? Like at this stage, this is gonna be some verbal processing with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like how can we activate people into the dream in process that's happening? And one way is come and see. I got to go. I don't care if you're in town or out of town. It'll be worth your time to come and spend an afternoon with Nate and let him walk you through this miracle that's happening and see the faces and see the people and shake hands and hug the people. Like I got to do that, and it was a blessing for me to get to do that. So that's one way that I can think of that people can pour gasoline on the fire of the dream and the vision and the miracle that's happening over there. Are there other ways that people can be coming alongside?
Yeah. So yeah, come and see for sure. Come and see. I hope it's an inspiration. I hope it's an encouragement, right? Not because I'm much or because James is much or because our church is much, but because we're just unleashing the gospel, right?
Yeah.
So come and see. The type of church planting and replication in our own backyard that we're trying to do is hard, right? And so we're going to need people to come alongside us in that process. We by no means are the church planting experts. We're trying to be missionaries in our community.
Yep. Yep.
We're looking for active partnerships, whether it be individual or organizations that will come alongside us. We're going to need three things to come into place at the same time. The miracle, right, in my mind, of a church plant is having the right people paired with the right resources in the right community-bounded facility all at the same time. For those things to come together, I think that there's a miracle there. And you can even just imagine what it would look like to recruit the right people and have the right amount of money and have a building.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is a miracle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's not my work, right? That's me
Yes.
just trying to be a good facilitator of God's miracles.
Yes.
Right? So we need partners. We need, if you're a pastor listening to this that maybe knows it, or maybe you're going to a church that has a vision for what it might look like to go on a kingdom adventure and see a revitalization in your community, in your church, reach out to us. I'll meet with anybody. I'll cast this vision with anybody. This is my life's work at this point in time.
Yeah.
I'll meet with anybody. I'll take you out to a good cup of coffee at an amazing community coffee shop.
Yeah.
Talk, right?
Yeah.
I would love to discuss that with what that could look like. So
Yes.
maybe it's you looking for a kingdom adventure in your community.
Yeah.
Maybe it's you just looking for opportunities to invest your resources. So as you can imagine, this is a very expensive thing. In some cases, these buildings could potentially be free. So like in the case of an adoption, it's a free building that's going to cost us $1 million to renovate it.
Yeah.
In some cases, they're not able to give the building for free, and it's going to cost us $1 million to buy the building.
Yeah.
There is no free lunch here.
Yeah.
And so if you're somebody that is looking for a really kingdom oriented way to invest your resources
Yes.
into kingdom ministry that I think is going to live on for generations,
Yes.
come talk to me. I would love to put your resources to work. I would love to show you the vision for how you can contribute to that Kingdom Adventures Fund and see that money do amazing kingdom work down the road. And so
That's
come
good.
and
Yeah.
see,
Yeah. Yeah.
participate through giving. Come and
Yeah.
talk to me about that.
Yeah.
And then if we sparked your interest as somebody that likes the idea that that entrepreneurial executive pastor,
Yes.
I would love to chat with you. We're going to need, I'm hoping, dozens of those just to reach our community here in the next 10 years. And so if you're one of those people that says, man, lead pastor, maybe that was never really my thing, but I am highly entrepreneurial and I know that I'm an implementer, reach out. I would love to
Yep.
chat with you and
Yep.
talk with you about what it could look like to raise you up and train you into that
Yep.
role and maybe pair
Yep.
you with a visionary leader down the road. Again, for that prophet, priest, and king balance, so that you could potentially be, maybe it's a bridge church plant, or maybe it's just even a different church plant. I'm okay for people to, I would love to see people, I'd love to be so busy with people even incubating at the bridge church that are going off to do their own thing. It doesn't have to be a bridge church thing. So if you want to come and incubate, come and talk to us about that. If you want to be part of a bridge church plant, come and talk to us about that. I'm convinced that we're going to get to do this a lot of times in the future. And man, why would I not want people to come and be part of the miracle? Because I think that's what it is. That's how who puts together a non-denominational church out of a Baptist church with a Presbyterian church and sees that work. And then, you know, what's crazy is then we adopted a church from the Church of God, Anderson, Indiana. And we got a donation from the Christian and Missionary Alliance churches, right? As a non-denominational church.
Wow.
This idea that it's got to be part of your denomination, like we're not really all that concerned about that. We have a big tent,
Yeah.
big umbrella.
Yeah.
We are interested in partnering across denominations. Obviously, we're going to make sure that there's enough commonplace there that we're going to be effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that we're starting something here. I don't even think we're starting something here. I think God is doing something here that we
Yes.
get to be part of that is an absolute miracle.
Yes.
And so, yes, unabashedly, I would love anybody that wants to be part of that miracle to come and ask questions, and let's talk about how you can be part of that miracle.
Bro, I love you, man. I love and appreciate
Mutual,
you. I
man.
appreciate everything that you've done in my life. I appreciate what God is using you to do in the world. And so thanks for spending time with me today, Nate.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Absolutely.
And everybody who is here to the end, you know, I'll have some more notes in the article that releases with this episode. Ways to interact with Nate and learn more about what they're doing at the Bridge Church. But thanks for joining us and staying with us up to this point, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy.
Awesome. Appreciate it, brother.